Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe, followers, likes, double tap.
Welcome back, everyone, to the 817 podcast. EJ, how are you doing this week?
Man, tough week at work. Got beat with the ugly stick at work. Exhausted. The weather held up. The state of Texas is making me hard to be a proud Texan. But you went to the Capitol. How was going to the Capitol? Not to riot or anything. You went to the Capitol to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. I maintain that Austin is a great place to visit, but I would not want to live there. When on a Sunday morning, it takes like 45 minutes to get a couple miles outside the city. And then you get to the suburbs, which are even worse to drive through. It's just not my vibe.
Yeah.
But great food town. Love going and hanging out there.
Yeah, I need to get out there. It's been a while. But yeah, man, I'm glad you got through the weather. We got through the weather. The weather wasn't too bad. Man, let's just get into it and see what we got. We could start with, I think what you said is a good idea. We're going to start. So for everyone listening, hope you're well. Hopefully the rain didn't do anything too crazy for yourself. Hopefully you're safe. Let's go ahead and start with like the local stuff. And then we're going to, I think the big story is just going to be Governor Abbott, the state, and all the crazy things going on there for us who don't know. But let's go ahead and dive in first with the kind of giving our updates on the mayoral race, the city council race. Early voting has started. If you're listening to this on Monday, so it has started and it goes to June 1st. So make sure you get out there and vote and go from there. What is your take on where you are today on the kind of local politics?
I think it's been interesting over the last week to see a little bit less of the, like, this is a nonpartisan thing. Like Maddie Parker was speaking at a big Fort Worth GOP event. Deborah Peoples, I got a mailer from her yesterday that says Democrat Deborah Peoples for mayor of Fort Worth. And it's refreshing. Like, nonpartisan elections are, I'm just not really a fan of where, especially for mayor, where that like draws the line and people trying to like hide behind things when we know Maddie Parker's not nonpartisan. She's worked for Republicans her whole life.
Yeah.
We know Deborah Peoples is not nonpartisan. She was the head of the Tarrant County Democratic Party. So let's stop pretending.
Yeah.
So I've kind of enjoyed how that's opened up a little bit more this week.
Yeah, no, to me, honestly, I'm where I am with Maddie and Deborah. Again, I think they're two great candidates, and I'm interested in where the election goes. I mean, where the city goes with whoever's in office. I think I'm more excited about the potential at the city council space. I think, to me, the Jungus Jared Williams race is very important. And I guess I think Deborah's doing a lot of cool stuff. Like, we saw the Beto endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
He sent out an email to all of his people to sign up for phone banking opportunities. I think my wife did so. And so I know that hit the state. She has her video commercial. I know we always kind of gave her a hard time on her marketing, but like, that video looked pretty sweet.
She's showing up on YouTube also.
Yeah.
Like, she's got YouTube ads now. So she's definitely getting back in the game.
I think if Deborah wins, which, I don't know how close you feel that is going to happen, but it's going to be I think maybe she was more surgical and just knew how this works because of her experience.
Yeah, for sure.
What she had to do to get it done. But yeah.
What were your takes on, there's been a couple debates / forums since we last talked. What were your takes on those?
Yeah, I mean, I usually feel like Maddie wins on the debates just because of her style, her energy, and her experience at pitching donors. You can just tell there. But then I actually think the KERA one with the Fort Worth report, which kudos to Chris and the team there. I thought Deborah really did the best. Like, that was her best one for me. I think she talked about solutions. She shared some numbers. She challenged Maddie. They did talk about Tatiana Jefferson. What is your take? I know her sister is, suing the county, right? Am I right with the county?
She is suing by name former police chief Krause and Mayor Betsy Price for negligence in training and basically creating an environment that allows and fosters something like this to happen, which I think is really interesting. I don't know for sure if this is like a case that has come up before involving like the murder of
Tatiana.
Yeah, or just nationally the murder of innocent black people, where like the mayor and police chief are personally getting sued. I know that like taxpayers are like one of the broken parts of the police system is that taxpayers are the ones that foot the bill for things like this. But I'm all about it. Like bring the thunder down on these people. Like if they, and I don't think it's an if. I think that we know that the police department has fostered this type of culture nationally and in Fort Worth previously. But I think it's interesting that they believe they can prove that, especially in relation to the individuals of Krause and Mayor Price.
Yeah, we're looking at it. Yeah, Tatiana Jefferson's sister wrongfully death lawsuit Wednesday against the city of Fort Worth. So the city of Fort Worth, I think they doing this now because whoever is supporting them feels like there's a legit, like they're like, if we're going to deal with the trauma we just been through, we could either move along and say this is life, or I'm going to double down and go through this process systemically, which supports police. So I'm going to be the underdog in this fight. Even though, I mean, there's just, the man opened her backyard. How, like, if you're a Texan, any Texan who says your property, right? Anyone, you say, if someone's in your backyard and, Tatiana Jefferson has a gun in her hand, like, I feel like at that position, the police can't use the word, oh, she had a gun, so we shot, because you're in the backyard. It's not like you were on the street and she was swinging a gun in the front yard.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're sneaking up on her in her backyard.
Yeah.
And she noticed you.
And if you're a Texan
and if you're a gun owner, like you're gonna grab your weapon.
And then so I just think like, this is a very, like, Texans, you can support your police, but if you support the freedom, your Second Amendment and all this that you're passing, Tatiana Jefferson didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, to your point about she's the underdog, but they wouldn't be going through this if they didn't think that they could win. And that's what I think is really interesting, especially with including Mayor Price in this lawsuit, who is already expressing that she, I believe, wants to run for Tarrant County judge. So, like, you're suing the person who is essentially looking to be the boss of all the people ruling on this decision. You're right that she's they're a major underdog in this, but clearly this is something that they think they can win. And that's what I think is really interesting about this. And I hope they do. I would love to see people be held accountable for the culture that is created in police departments nationally. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Aaron Dean was just not a stable or psychologically, to me, he breeds the systemic perspective of what it means to be a cop. Tough guy, own a gun, just the quotes, just the things he did in his past, from looking at look at this. According to the Fort Worth Civil Service Rules and Regulation, the misdemeanor charge would not prevent Dean. He, in 2004, was arrested and pled guilty to assault of a woman at the University of Texas. That's...
Yeah. Well, and that, maybe this is a tangent, but who was the guy who was running for school board against, Michael Phipps, is that his name? He's I believe it's Michael Phipps. He's a deputy police chief, and he was canvassing our street at one point, and we were talking to him, and he's like, yeah, we designed this test for cops to be passable for people coming out of high school that just, got their GED or whatever the minimum standard is. And so many people coming out of Fort Worth schools couldn't even pass that test. And so I'm running for school board so that I can help people pass the bare minimum test to become a cop. Like, that's not who I want being a police officer in this city. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty low bar that we're giving there. But like you said, and the interview, Aaron Dean's interview, I believe is on YouTube. Oh, yeah. I've watched parts of that before, and that's pretty terrifying. But with Dean's trial coming up, I just feel for this family with all of the relitigating of this that they are having to do. And I really hope that this whole process can help provide some small amount of closure to them and justice.
Yeah. And for the mayors, whoever wins, this is definitely going to be a first kind of big task, how you handle this.
Yeah, and I think we know who is better prepared to handle that. Like, it's not a secret who is better prepared to handle that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we could go ahead and get into the big story.
Yeah, let's talk about Governor Abbott and all of the garbage things that he signed into law this week for the state of Texas.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
So it was quite the week. I believe Monday was when he ended the $300 federal unemployment starting at near the end of June. And this doesn't cost Texas anything. Like, this is money from the federal government going into the pockets of Texans that we're just like, we're cool without it. We're sitting on all of our rent relief that we're making impossible for you to apply for and distribute, but we're cool taking this money away too. And I know that it's coming from these really just like garbage claims that $300 is keeping people from taking minimum wage jobs. But I think the flip side of this is how many people are stimulating the economy in ways right now that they won't be able to if they don't have that extra $300 a week. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot easier to go out to dinner an extra time or buy an extra coffee if you've got that extra money coming in. And so I wonder if this really backfires the opposite way, where businesses start to see a little bit of a drop off because people don't have that money to spend anymore.
Yeah, I mean, let's break it down like in the most basic, one of the most basic examples, right? Let's say you're a father or a mother and you're taking your two kids to, a movie theater, and someone gives you a $30 gift card to like buy some more snacks. It's not your money, but you can get your kids some more snacks. And you're like, no, I'm good. I just think how Governor Abbott talks from it as, Texas unemployment is better than it was February 2020. We're growing jobs. We're doing better than the country. But it sounds like you forget, bro. Like, you forget about the electric grid. You forget about people dealing with hail damage, right? You're forgetting that people are dealing with, you had their house shut off for a week. You're forgetting about all these things that you and your people made a mistake on. But you're trying to build a bravado that, again, great Texas, we're great. Look at our unemployment stuff, but you're forgetting what you pit people through because of your ego. And that's like this kind of dollars and funds could be helpful in many other ways that are caused by how we behaved as state leaders.
Yeah, well, and everything that we'll talk about today and that he's done this week is just pandering to an extremist GOP mentality because he doesn't want to get primaried in 2022. He's taking advantage of this legislative session to just pass whatever he thinks will get people fired up and get his more extreme population mobilized because he doesn't want to get primaried next year.
Yeah, he's trying to run it, but I mean, people will talk about him having presidential race ambitions too, though, right? Like, have you heard anything like that? I feel like,
I mean, I think this would pander to that. He's up against, DeSantis from Florida has been pandering to that the entire time. Yeah. Like, I would say that he's pretty far behind DeSantis as far as the extremist vote goes.
Yeah.
But these are all decisions that I think would also point to him feeling out if 2024 would be feasible for him.
Yeah. Looking at some other stuff around like federal funding, we are still going to be looking like getting millions in federal stimulus cash headed to North Texas. Tarrant County is set to receive more than $408 million, according to a breakdown provided by the White House. Fort Worth has been allotted nearly $174 million, and Arlington more than $81 million. This is the first for Arlington to receive direct allotment through the American Rescue Plan. The funds are in addition to more than $15.8 billion allotted to Texas. But here's what I thought was like interesting about it. A lot of what people are talking about around this is to, go back to businesses. So I just find it funny that like, money that goes back to employers. We don't need that money. Employees. Yeah. Money that goes to people who need jobs. We're good. But the money we do get, though, we're going to go spend on some businesses.
Yeah.
Like, look at Tarrant County Judge Glenn Whitley said the county may look into small business grants and finding ways to use the money to help with, child care facilities. That's a positive. And restaurants. So I think I thought this was a positive, though. Another use is mental health care. But Fort Worth Betsy Price also had her classic boot line in here where she talked about, she basically kind of said, we'll pull our boots up and go to work. We can do without it, but it's a nice bonus to have it. The city is looking to use the funds to help offset tourism and convention losses by allocating money to help visit Fort Worth. I just feel like a lot of this is going to be focused on tourism, and because we're currently set up not to be a destination where people want to live, and we're more set up as a place that's big enough to rent and be, a main event to conferences, for conferences. Our story and the way our city runs, the money looks like, we need that money to help those, our tourist people, aka businesses.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm just, it's such a poisonous thing to continue to push this idea that asking for help is wrong. And it's such an American idea that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you do it by yourself, and we build our own kingdoms, and we don't live communally. And it's especially exacerbated in the South and whatever Texas is considered in relation to the South. But I really dislike the continuation of that culture when I see it. And I feel like the last year has shown us that we rely on each other a lot. We have to work together as a community to beat COVID, to support small businesses, et cetera, et cetera. You can go down the laundry list of things that have happened over the last year that take communal effort. And just this idea of you can do it individually it's where America has been for the past century, and it doesn't bode well for the future of societies that continue to act like it's all on you to do yourself.
Yeah. Well, I know that wasn't the only piece with Governor Abbott. I know that was just one of, I would argue, what the four things. I guess another good transition would be the conversation around the study that showcased the amount of money North Texas will lose because of the voting, legislation that we're putting out, which to me, I think is also funny because it's so counterintuitive. It's like Governor Abbott's like, nah, we're good. We don't need money for unemployment. Oh, the money we do get, we're going to use for businesses. Oh, and we're going to lose money from businesses because we're going to put in these awful suppressive voting act, which is going to make people not want to come here to, corporations who have said they're not going to places that pass things like that, MLB. And now you're like, I don't care about that. Like, we don't want them. And it's like, oh, but I thought you're here for businesses and economy and economic growth.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another thing I saw this week was that the video game company behind like Borderlands that's located in North Texas said that if and when any anti-LGBTQ legislation is passed in Texas, which it's not far behind, that they'll be taking their investment elsewhere also. And it just all, nothing that Abbott says or does comes out of the same mission other than I need to consolidate my power. Yep. And I need to set up to make it so that the GOP keeps power here in Texas and nationally. And that's just all I take from the voting rights stuff is it's not about election integrity. Nobody thinks it's about election integrity. It's about making it harder for people to vote who are not going to vote for Gregg Abbott.
Yeah. So it's Senate Bill 7. Basically, the bill will limit how local officials can expand voting options, regulate the distribution of polling places in urban areas, set new rules for by mail, and also enhance poll watching, among other things. That's going to be fun. So you got that going on. But what's crazy about it, people, which kudos to companies. I mean, money talks. So
yeah,
we'll see how long companies hold on these things, and hopefully they do. But according to according to Waco-based Perryman Group, which is an analyzer of financial impact of legislation, Texas could lose $16.7 billion in revenue from tourism and economic development, and lose about nearly $150,000 jobs by 2025, according to their analysis. Tarrant County could lose up to $1 billion from tourism and economic development and lose about 9,000 jobs, according to the analysis. And here's what Abbott has to say. He went on to write that he will not participate in any MLB event and that the state will not seek to host an all-star game or any MLB event. Quote, "It is shameful that America's pastime is not only being influenced by partisan political politics, but also perpetuating false political narratives." He wrote how he's just going to be protesting the MLB. But let's go back to what we just talked about. We talked about we don't need federal stimulus for employees. Whitley and said that we're going to use the money that we are getting to support tourism and businesses in Fort Worth. Because, it's not a because, but at the same time, we're going to pass a voting bill or put it on the table to pass this voting bill that harms those same people we want to put money in. So it's almost like now the federal government is paying dollars for you to pass the voting bill without any consequences. Because if you would have had the MLB here, you would have brought in some money, but now you're going to fill that money with the federal money to help these people so that you can stay all, act big and bad that you're going to protest the MLB.
But you're not going to give money to unemployed people or to people who need rent relief.
Yeah. Well, let's actually dive into, there's not just this economic piece with the state and Governor Abbott, which I think we really had some good thoughts there. We also had like the critical race theory, which basically probably the most recent news that happened while over the weekend and during this time is there's a new bill that was passed by the Senate that is about critics saying that critical race theory cannot be taught in public schools, where we basically identify race as a majority or the sole reason that things are happening, or that one race is better. It was an 18-13 vote approved by the Senate. Educators, advocacy groups were worried about this, mainly because it just also makes it very difficult to teach things around just very confrontational pieces of our history. And it also just allows parents and community people to really make it hard for teachers to teach very important subjects. And now there's like, they could get challenged for the things that they say, which is very hard.
Yeah, I mean, this group of people passing this bill have been screaming cancel culture and I'm being censored on social media, blah, 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 all this garbage for the past year plus. They say that they are, behind the amendments and your right to free speech. But here we come with this state-sponsored censorship. That's it. That's not what they believe in. This is like dictator type stuff where you can't teach that. I mean, it eliminated like 28 different works from women and people of color that used to be taught that now cannot be taught. I mean, this is miserable. Yeah. And especially when we look through this, like, how does this affect Fort Worth schools? And when we think about Fort Worth public schools and the dynamic of them, which is vastly minority,
over 80%
minority in Fort Worth public schools, now cannot be taught about a number of Black, brown, Asian, female, women, authors, educators, historians. For what? Like, I don't know if anybody who voted for this or wrote this bill could actually define critical race theory.
Yeah.
Like, how about we start with that question? What do you think critical race theory is? And now you're out here saying that you can't study the works and stories of women and people of color. That, I mean, it's state-sponsored censorship.
Yeah, and I thought it was crazy how the Senate did vote to include the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 13th and the 14th and 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and the complexity of the relationship between Texas and Mexico to the list of required instruction. I'm like, we had to like have a conversation that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was going to be like a part of the conversation. Yeah. Like, I didn't even know we had to bring this up. Like, that's just kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, and even, okay, so I didn't go through Texas education. I never took Texas history because I was from Florida. Like, what is the lens of the Texas-Mexico relationship that you're taught? Is it remember the Alamo and come and take it and don't tread on me? Yeah. Like, what? That's not the complexities of the relationship between Texas and Mexico.
Yeah.
That is colonialism of the U.S. trying to drive people out of here. Like, that's what is going to remain in the textbooks, not actually talking about the dynamic of Hispanic and Mexican culture in the area. Like, that's what this is sponsoring.
Yeah. Yeah, it's allowing places like South Lake, places like Aledo, to feel like they're doing the right thing. And
yeah, this made my head want to explode.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm just scared of like if I don't have kids yet, but if I was having a black or brown child, and you already have white people taking their kids out of public school. And And so you kind of need to support the people who are actually your customer.
Right.
And then he said, nah, fam, we're good.
Yeah.
And it's like, now I feel like they will all want to leave. Like, that's like, I mean, but even if they know any of this is going on, a lot of things is like, so much of this is, unless you're reading and informed, like, you don't even know this is happening.
And talented teachers. Like,
yeah.
Texas does, I mean, nobody pays teachers well.
Yeah.
Relative to other people, other places, like Fort Worth pays teachers fairly well to start out. But if you're trying to decide where you want to apply to be an educator, are you going to do it in the place where you feel limited in what you're allowed to teach? No, like, you're not going to come here. And what are the ramifications for black and brown teachers who are being told that they can't teach about a lot of these authors and people who have informed a lot of their upbringing and their point of view? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's
well, and
Go ahead.
I hate that this like gets compared to like, we're not going to let terrorists like preach their ideals. Like, we can't just let anybody talk about anything.
I like your Texas accent.
Thank
brother.
you. The idea that like critical race theory and like terrorism are even compared is so psychotically insane. And it's disgusting. And like, that's what we continue to see, is that these people act like, oh, we're not going to let somebody come in and teach them how to make a bomb. Like, yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
This isn't that. Like, the fact that those two things get like put in the same sentence and same idea is just so mind-bogglingly infuriating.
Yeah.
It just heats me up so much.
I think that's one. There's two issues that I think are really holding our growth as Americans. That is the battle between capitalism and government. You either think capitalism is good or you think it's bad, or you think the government's good or you think the government's bad. And it's much more kind of in the middle. And I think the other big thing is like race. You either think it is a problem, but there's a lot of people think you're just being over dramatic. And like, it doesn't exist. Like, Republicans feel like, oh, all that stuff is over now. We're all the same now. And they don't like, and to me, what's tough with race is like, how, if Texas likes standardizing tests and they like numbers.
Yeah.
There is ample amount of evidence that race impacts people. Research shows that black households headed by a college degree has less wealth, $23,400, than white households headed by a high school dropout, $34,700, written in the Wall Street Journal. So, and it's also showing that black Americans with college degrees are not actually having any more wealth than their non-degreed peers.
Yeah.
So these are real things that we have to like say, like I just think like the goal of America is so like, and even when I hear about politics, and I think this is what stresses me out about either the Republican Party or the wealthy people of Fort Worth. It's like, but we're providing the floor. But what we're not doing is providing the goal to be aspirational, and that's I guess it's representation. And there I'm talking about the whole goal in America should be, does every neighborhood, every way of living, every way of challenges, every way of opportunity represent the embodiment of the people in America, right? 60% is white, 40% is non-white. Are we creating neighborhoods that look like that? Are we creating colleges that look like that? Are we creating golf events that look like that? Anything and everything we do, that should be the goal. And I think this allows, when you do this, you're suppressing that none of that matters because we all think it's made up. And that's like one of the biggest things. I'm just convinced that rich white people in power just hate never being wrong. And they hate, they're really good. They're really talented. They know how to grow money. They know how to build businesses. And just because you're not good at understanding race doesn't mean it's not real. Just because you're not good at understanding race and impact in society doesn't mean you villainize it and say, woke culture. And all these things are created because you feel uncomfortable not understanding it. And so now you villainize it because you've been good at everything you've done in your life.
Well, and I think I don't even know if villainize is the right word. I think dehumanize is the right word. Because when you remove the humanity from these ideas, it becomes easier to get behind them.
Yeah.
Because it's not about like loving your neighbor anymore because you don't see that person as human. It's not about being there to support each other in the community because they're not human. It's like a modern take on like a 3/5 compromise and saying that you're not fully human, you're 3/5 of a human. And I feel like, I could say lots of things about how the Southern Evangelical Church works to dehumanize people that don't look like them.
Which leads to also Governor Abbott and abortion. Like which is the other one.
Yeah.
We haven't hit him all. Man, he was on a tear this week.
But that I think is the goal, is dehumanization, and that we've done a really good job of it with athletes. Like people feel like they can get online and just like tear into athletes and say really hateful things because they don't see them as human. They see them as
zoo characters.
Yeah, as a zoo character, someone just on the screen. You're not real. You don't have a real life, real struggles. And it's just like bleeds into everything where actor gives a poor performance and you say, man, that person's trash. Like that person's not trash.
Yeah.
And like we do it too.
Yeah,
like, it goes the other way. But I think that like dehumanization factor is a big part of what drives things like this. And yeah, like we can talk about the abortion bill where abortion is now, or I don't know the like timeline on it, but the bill makes abortion past 6 weeks illegal. And it makes it illegal for like everybody. If you are an Uber driver and you pick somebody up and drive them to a clinic to get an abortion, you can be sued for aiding and abetting an abortion. All you did was you're just trying to like make your side hustle.
Yeah.
Like you're just trying to feed your family. One thing I saw on Twitter from someone who read through the law from a court reporter is that one of the most interesting things about the Texas abortion law is that it prohibits a court from imposing fee shifting as a sanction for frivolous claims brought under the statute. Basically, you could if you want to piss somebody off in Texas now, just start suing them for aiding and abetting an abortion, and like they're stuck paying their legal fees even if your claims are frivolous and stupid and not substantiated. Like that's where this is at. There are so many things we could say about how is it like a government's right to make this decision for people. Spinning around like these people don't think that forced vasectomies until a man is ready to actually provide for a household and have an income. They don't believe in that. Like same sort of thing that we're talking about. The thing that just like frustrates me a lot is that Texas has one of the worst foster care systems in the United States. Like no matter how many times Abbott says it, he doesn't care about these kids. He doesn't care about their life. He cares about posturing so that he doesn't face a challenge for getting primaried next year. And it just like the collateral damage of this is so disgusting and disturbing, and just really, really makes me angry, regardless of how you feel about abortion. Like it's just so beyond that we have such a broken system that we would rather just have just put kids into broken foster care systems and not care at all about the impact of that, versus actually having like a legitimate conversation about this.
Yeah, I mean, it was... Yeah, and the way that they have it set up is that the person who, like basically, like, while abortion providers typically sue the state to stop a restrictive abortion law from taking effect, there's no state official enforcing Senate Bill 8. So there's, like, no one to sue the bills, like if you're trying to fight it or whatever, it's like, you just got to go through the process. And I think that's, like, smart. And then what's crazy about it, it's like, the crazy person who would sue you, if they won, would be awarded at least $10,000 as well as costs for attorney fees.
It's literally like headhunting.
Yeah. And I thought what was crazy about this is when you factor in the time it takes to confirm a pregnancy, consider your options, make a decision, schedule an appointment, comply with all restriction politicians have already put in place for patients and providers, a 6-week ban essentially outright not possible, right? And like, this is what people are talking about. And these are people who work in these spaces. This is the lady who runs whole woman health clinics. And she says 90% of their work is after 6 weeks. That's, yeah.
And it's not like, I mean, the other conversation is obviously smoking weed is illegal. People don't stop smoking weed. Like, just because this procedure is illegal doesn't mean that it stops, but now you don't have safe access to it. Or now you're having to drive a couple states away. And just like all the fear that goes into that. There's a movie that came out that we saw at Sundance in 2020 called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. And it really just, if you want a humanizing look at what it looks like for a young woman to go through an abortion, it was a really, really powerful and really well made film. But I mean, we're obviously like two guys talking about this.
Yeah.
But just there's just so much systemic brokenness behind a decision like this. And it's just so frustrating on top of everything else that happened this week that we've already talked about, that, you know, we just went in for the cherry on top, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, Governor Abbott, the state this week, right? No more $300 unemployment. Intimidate you if you are considering an abortion.
Intimidate you if you're voting.
Intimidate you if you're voting. Right? That's just this week. Right? And, yeah, would rather to lose money and financial gains to pass this voting, because he knows that this is what Texas knows they have to do. They know that this is their last chance. The way Texas has grown, the way it's flying, the way people are coming in with cash in the bank from California and New York to buy up these houses, they know it's coming, and this is their chance to try to do something. But realize that's our governor today. Those things is what they're doing today. Those are the things that they're worried about.
And they're not worried about a power grid that
people
is prone to fail this summer too.
Yeah.
Like, we already know that this summer could be very rough for the Texas power grid. Not to mention, you know, come next year, if we've got another big freeze, this whole thing happening again. They just don't care. They don't care about the things that practically help Texans every day. They care about this stuff that is posturing and gets in the way of democracy.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move into our wins and losses. This was a really good week of news. I mean, sometimes we have some slow news weeks and we're just like, whoa, what are we going to do? But there was a lot here, and there's some wins here today. This week as well.
Yeah.
Locally, but I mean.
We start with our losses.
Yeah, let's do that. What do you got?
My loss this week is that, Fort Worth has talked a lot about trying to make education better. And we've called that out on, candidates have done a good job at like person to person interaction and like one kid at a time getting things better. But we really haven't addressed systemic issues around education. And this week it was announced that the broadband that was supposed to be put in to allow all students access and all neighborhoods access to an equitable internet system keeps getting pushed back. And like when we talk about how do we make up for education loss during COVID, but we don't call out stuff like this for not being invested in and not being prioritized, like that's what we're talking about, and that's what we're frustrated with when we talk about how people in charge and candidates are not actually getting things done for education. And so the broadband that was supposed to go into every neighborhood doesn't really have like a firm time frame anymore, and is just sort of getting pushed back. And we don't make up for education loss by continuing to spin our wheels and do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 15, 16 months. Like, we need to make change. And this was something that was exciting when it was announced, something that was really needed. And now it's just sort of getting pushed back. And I don't know. I could see that this being something that just gets pushed back in perpetuity. Yeah,
about 1.8 million or 34% of the children in the state don't have adequate connection for distance learning. The bill designed to close gaps in Texas broadband coverage is expected to head to Governor Abbott soon. Basically they just pushed it back. It's and I think it's like this idea of like Texas is in this mode is that like COVID is over, but like not that COVID has provided us an opportunity. You need broadband regardless of learning loss, or like it's not like I don't fear schools closing in the fall either, but the future of school is now going to be more flexible and kids being able to do things more asynchronously and not having to be in class. So kids who have access to broadband internet at home will have a better experience to the more agileness that's going to come from school. I mean, you have Dallas, you have people creating virtual academies or creating ways where, rediscussing what attendance looks like. And this is an opportunity for us to get ahead in that conversation so that we can ensure broadband access for all kids, regardless how we change our learning formats, because what we've learned, COVID was an opportunity to modernize education. And obviously Texas just thinks it's a time to forget these problems and there's no more problems. We're back to normal.
Yeah. Well, and it's part of this is part of Biden's infrastructure plan also, is the idea that like broadband access isn't a privilege, it's a right. And if we want to prepare for this century and continue to lead worldwide, we need to set up a system that provides equitable access everywhere. And I think it's just indicative of, Texas's representatives in the House and Senate being very firm that they don't want to spend the money on that nationally, and it just trickles down statewide and locally.
My loss is another thing that the state of Texas is basically just getting really sketchy on, is the constitutional carry bill that would allow Texans 21 and older to carry a handgun without a license as long as they're not otherwise prohibited from having a firearm. This is just crazy scary. And the idea of how many people supported it. And I just think about the stress that creates for an already stressed out police group.
Yeah.
I mean, I just saw some kids, they're easily 21, just doing wheelies on dirt bikes, and I'm just like, oh, any of you are just going to walk around with a gun now, if you want to. And I just think like how much, not only do I want to send my kids to school, not only am I afraid of my family members who maybe have to make a mistake about abortion, I'm not even sure I want to walk around anywhere because now you're allowing anyone the real freedom to just have a gun. And we talked about an earlier part of this, how a prepared police officer got this wrong with a Tatiana Jefferson sneaking into her backyard. But now they're just going to let any average 21-year-old walk around with a gun because if they feel threatened.
Yeah.
Man, they're making it very fearful here in Texas for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It was just another thing where, like,
shout out to Chief Noakes, though, right? He's like, our department doesn't support any legislation that will allow a handgun to be carried without a license.
Well, and if you have Brooke was talking to someone this week who, when she was younger, like, did go to a licensing class and was just talking about her experience and how, like, the people there already didn't care. Like, they weren't paying attention to anything that was being said. Like, they were just there to, sit through and make sure they got their license. At least there was something. Like, now those people, nobody has to go through that process. Like, it's just so hard to track, like, who can be buying guns, who's able to own a gun, who has bought any guns.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. And, like, I don't get to speak from the perspective of, like, somebody who has to walk around fearful. So, like, I just echo what you say in that, and really hate that is the environment that Texas wants to create for people, and clearly speaks to the idea that they don't care about life. Like, the abortion thing isn't about being pro-life because they want people carrying around guns. And, like,
100%. 100%.
The only reason you carry a gun outside of a hunting lease is to shoot somebody, you know?
Yeah, because of fear of something's going to happen.
Right. And that comes from, we talked to Chris with the Fort Worth report about crime news, and that's because they're constantly getting fed that people are being murdered everywhere, and like, it's just this dynamic that continues to feed into itself, that creates unsafe environments for people of color, and not for the white people that are just walking around with a gun in their pocket.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and go to wins. If it makes it, to lift up this pod, I got 2 wins this
wow.
For the end. So there we go. But what's your win?
My win is the Fort Worth report asked the question: could we be speeding along I-30 at 250 miles per hour in a hyperloop? As somebody, like, Brooke and I are going to Japan next March, and I'm very excited about riding the high-speed rail that's there and being able to get around the country super easily. I would love, and we talked about how I went to Austin last weekend. Driving to and from Austin sucks so much. Like, it takes the joy out of, like, any trip down there. If I could hop on a 250 mile an hour train and get down there in, not very long at all. What's the little town where it's really a pain in the butt between Austin and Fort Worth? Waco.
Yeah, but it's even between Waco. It's like that. I mean, it's just like they're always construction, and it goes down the one lane, and I'm like, it's like Conroe maybe.
No, Conroe.
That's Houston.
Yeah, north of Houston.
I got to look it up while you keep talking, but yeah, I love this. I love this story they're talking about, and kudos to East Side, but it's going to be I-30. Like, I would love that. And the idea of Arlington has declined something like this multiple times, but I think the last time they put it on the ballot was like 2002. But I feel like they're talking about it's a different path than Grapevine into the airport. This is a path directly from Fort Worth to Dallas, going through Arlington on 30. That is cool.
Yeah, so cool.
20
Connect all of
minutes to
Texas.
Dallas.
I'm all about connect all of Texas. Make it easy for someone like us to get out to El Paso and go to Big Bend or explore Marfa. Make it easy to get down to San Antonio or Houston. But for like tourists coming here, if your option is to right now is to, go stay somewhere in Dallas and you've got to take an expensive Uber to go explore Fort Worth, or you've got to hop on like an hour and a half train ride to get to Fort Worth, you're probably skipping that. This is a win for the whole area.
Big time.
I would be all about it. And I have a second win too.
Oh, snap,
look at
go
us.
ahead.
The Dallas Mavericks.
Temple, by the way. Temple.
Temple.
Yeah. It's like right there, that
yeah.
little exit off of Temple. It's like, holy smokes, what's going on here?
The Dallas Mavericks announced that they will be having vaccine drives at their playoff games this year. I think that's awesome. Like, I've been a big proponent the whole time of like, take the vaccine to where people are. Don't make people come to you.
Yeah.
And especially since, for people that have had side effects, you really don't experience them until like 12 hours later, well after the basketball game's over. If you're going to a basketball game and you haven't gotten a shot, get your shot as you walk in or as you walk out, and get on with having a good time. I think that's awesome.
I love it. Yep. And they won. They beat the Clippers.
Yeah,
First
they
game.
did. That was I finally got to watch a game. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So my two wins are, one, always highlighting when Fort Worth is building innovation and future places for work, like this new California tech company who plans to relocate to Fort Worth. Smart Action, a small company that provides artificial intelligence services to businesses, is moving from Los Angeles to Fort Worth. And in the kind of next couple years, it looks like they're looking to have a minimum of 66 jobs here in Fort Worth. But these are knowledge-based working jobs, jobs where, people are working on the future. And so Robert Stearns, kudos for that. I think that's pretty cool. The CEO looks pretty legitimate and excited to be a part of Texas. The jobs will pay a minimum of just under $66,000. And I think this is also cool going with Sparkyard, and we bring up Cameron Cushman and the innovation that they're doing there. But they also just showed, like, recent search how far we are behind on other parts of tech. It showed that, I believe, Plano had more investment startup deals than Fort Worth. And so
2020 really widened that gap too.
Yeah. So it was showing that. And I think that's cool in the sense of, it's not cool, but it's sense of like, I think in order to become a 21st century company, we're going to need to get more angel investing and startup investing here and building out an accelerator. But it's also doing things like this, what Robert Stearns is doing with the, trying to find 21st century tech companies that have the potential to go from maybe just 66 jobs, but to maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
What's our rack space moment? San Antonio, Texas has rack space. Started there in San Antonio, became a multi-billion-dollar company, changed the landscape of what innovation and entrepreneurship looked in that city. Those are type of people and organizations we need to find. So that's a win.
Big win.
Boom. My next win is that, since Governor Abbott doesn't care about people, I'm very thankful for the $1 million in Tarrant County who are going to be used for rent relief. Fort Worth and Arlington will receive $60 million to give tenants and landlords for rent and utilities. Tarrant County has allocated $185,000 of its $24 million available funds. So, that is crazy sad. But there's an organization in here, and if you are someone who is dealing with rent challenges, or someone who's dealing with rent challenges, you can go to an updated site called GetRentHelp.com, which is specific to work in Tarrant County. The website is a one-stop shop for renters and landlords in Tarrant County to get direct access to the application. But what I love about this is real doers, real action people. There's an organization called Fort Worth Housing Solutions, and there's a lady named Dana Senegal, and she's literally going around and knocking on apartment doors, and she's already helped 40 people apply for assistance. And I think that goes like really what I think proactive solution power looks like. You know, don't just sit in a corner and hope people come to you. She's out there saying, hey, how are you doing? Building that rapport and doing the real work that matters. So kudos to her and her team.
Yeah, we've railed on the state and the city a lot for its failures with rent assistance. And so thank you to people like Dana who figured out how to do it and are being proactive in helping people. And so Fort Worth Housing Solutions and GetRentHelp.com. If you know somebody who is in need, head to those places and they're ready and eager to help.
Yeah. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
Great little show.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening. Next week, we will have a conversation with Mitch Witten, the executive vice president of Visit Fort Worth, and get to talk about what it's like telling Fort Worth's story. We're really excited to talk to Mitch. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Control your life, control your life. Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Follow us like double tap. Now they control your life, control your life.